Hey, Sopranos fans! Welcome to another episode here on Bully Whispers, where we will be going over the 5 best plot lines that never happened in The Sopranos. And I'm just going to get a couple of things out of the way right up front, the first of which being that none of them have anything to do with Melfi's assault. I think her not telling Tony was consistent with her character, and the show kinda indirectly gave the audience satisfaction through a few instances over the course of the series. Starting in season 1, between a late 20s Brendan Filone hitting on a junior in high school, and of course the Coach Hauser situation, it was looking like Chris Hansen would be making a guest appearance very soon. Fortunately for all of us, the writers decided to go in a different direction.
That creepy pedophile vibe he's got going on is going to be a tough sell, even in Europe.
And didn't wander down that particular path again for the rest of the series. Of course, the audience was upset because Tony didn't hurt Coach Hauser, which is pretty much how they felt when Melfi didn't tell Tony. The audience finally somewhat gets satisfaction when it comes to things of that nature after Tony beats Coco for harassing Meadow, even though it was nowhere near as egregious as what happened to Allie Vandermeed or Dr. Melfi, so that's why I say only somewhat. The second thing is that none of them have anything to do with Valerie the Russian, because open plot lines like that don't bother me, especially in a show like The Sopranos. With Tony being who he is and doing what he does, he is bound to end up with so many enemies that he can't keep track of them all, and this fits right in with that dynamic. As such, none of the plot lines on this list are due to open plot lines, and only 2 are due to underdeveloped plot lines, which brings us to number 5 on the list, Furio Junta. Let's be honest here. The character of Furio had Blaze of Glory written all over him, and the way he just kind of left was very disappointing, especially for such a fan favorite. Now, the way things were shaping up, this Blaze of Glory would have been over Carmella, and it wouldn't have been just him pushing Tony into the blade, because if Tony dies, the show is over. Personally, I don't think the Carmella storyline would have been the way to go. I'd have rather seen him involved in a mob war, but an actual conflict with Tony over Carmella, that he would of course lose, would have been much better than him just kind of disappearing back to Italy. This brings us to number 4 on the list. AJ actually going to jail after he tried to kill Junior. Not only would this have saved us from his actual plotline in Season 6, but it would have opened up a whole new world of possibilities for AJ, as well as a potential spin-off series, kinda like The Sopranos meets Oz.
Oh, wait, Oz?
In all seriousness, though, that would have been an interesting plotline, and I would have been curious to see how he handled it. He could use the sick knife-fighting moves he was practicing in the episode Johnny Cakes to defend himself, or he could compromise more than Phil Leotardo. Personally, my money is on the latter, and I'm not sure if who his dad is would help him or hurt him. Remember, AJ wouldn't just be going off to some drunk tank somewhere for a little while. He would be going to the big boy prison with a lot of people who would probably never get out. So let me know in the comments how you think that would have played out and how much, if any, Tony could help AJ. This brings us to number 3 on the list, which is actually a twofer. They should have done more with either the war for control over New York between Johnny Sack and Little Carmine, or the war between New York and New Jersey. Both of these conflicts had a lot of potential, and especially in the case of the New York-New Jersey War, a lot of buildup, but both just kind of ended quickly. That being said, extending both of them probably would have been too much, but one of them would have been great, and of the two, the New York-New Jersey War would make more sense. Ever since New York started taking on a significant presence in the show, it seemed inevitable that one of the climaxes of the show would be a war between the two, so it would have been nice to have seen one big actual war. Speaking of number 2, that brings us to number 2 on the list. I would have liked to have seen someone actually try and leave for good, kinda like Vito did briefly, except without coming back. Vito could have been a good choice, but there was already so much going on in Season 6 that they wouldn't be able to do a manhunt justice in terms of screen time. Christopher thought about it for a second, but he is way too important to the show for him to be the one that does it. Practically speaking, assuming he was willing to leave his family, Big Pussy could have done it, but his plotline was too integral in the shaping of the series to really be altered, plus they would have just done the Fabian Petrulio thing the season prior, so that might have been manhunt overkill, so to speak. Ultimately, I'm not sure who would have been the best character to try this. Maybe Adriana, maybe Eugene Pontecorvo, after all he does have the money, maybe some other character entirely. Let me know who you think would have been the best to do it down in the comments. And this brings us to number 1 on our list, which is actually a 2-part plotline that starts with Richie Aprile. You see, Richie was a simple country boy, you might say a cockeyed optimist, who got himself caught up in the high-stakes game of... Oh, wait, no, that's Billy Mumphrey. Richie was a stone-cold gangster who brought a new level of crazy to the show and ended up being a bit of a fan favorite. Unfortunately for him, he gave Love a bad name, and Janice Bon Jovi'd him after less than a season. But if he had just held out a bit longer into Season 3, he would have been around for the return of Crazy Ralph Cifaretto from Florida to join his crew. Between Richie selling coke and Ralphie doing coke, oh, the shenanigans these two could have gotten into, and I'm sure Janice would have added an extra layer of fun to this point of the plotline. It's here that we get into the second point of this plotline, and it's important to remember that Richie is still loyal to Junior and has been this entire time. So, moving forward, eventually, we could have had the two craziest gangsters, Richie and Ralph, under the leadership of Junior, who was now actually losing his mind. Okay, so that second part is definitely pushing it a bit, but it would have been cool to see Richie and Ralph at the same time. So, that was my top 5 ideas for missed opportunities for plot lines on the show. I'm sure you have some of your own, so let me know what they are down in the comments section. And before signing off, I would like to acknowledge that, of course, the writers did a fantastic job. Not all of these ideas could have even feasibly fit into the plot lines, but nevertheless, it is fun to think about. Well, thanks for watching this episode here on Bully Whispers. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.